Isn't it amazing how many people despise the truth? Welcome back to Judah Vision. Welcome to the show, and welcome all new subscribers. I have an amazing show planned for you today, so we're just going to get rolling. As you all know, I'm Judah, the author of the best-selling Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals series, only available on Amazon.com. And if you came in through this book and you've read my work, please post what you think about my work, and feel free to discuss any questions or comments about it. And thank you for your business. It helps to spread the truth that money. Today's episode is incredible. We're going to finish learning about the programming on the $1 bill and how it applies to Solomonic magic and who put that seal there. We're going to find out that it is the bloodline of the Order of Skull and Bones who did that. What an incredible thing. And today's episode is loosely titled The Order of Skull and Bones Plots to Destroy Hoover Dam, and we're going to study an amazing piece of predictive programming that unfolded as I studied more about how that great seal, supposed great seal, wound up on our $1 bill, the American currency. Today I proved to you that FDR was a Knights Templar who programmed the Vegas shooting onto the $1 bill 100 years ago with the aid of the American government. My first book was titled Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, as the series mentioned, and I want to read you a little outtake to kick off the show, which led me back to Mandalay Bay. I'd already written about Warren Delano in quite great detail because this gentleman, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandfather, was actually responsible for the terrible opiate epidemic, which kicked off a series of opiate epidemics in this country, which have been a great scam, as I write in my book, Hitler's New Shower. But as I started Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, I was studying this opiate epidemic, which led back to this Warren Delano, and ironically, there was a tower, another golden tower on Mandalay Bay, just behind the one from which the gunman shot, and it was called Delano Tower. And I'd seen this Delano Tower flying in and out of Vegas, both privately and commercially, and I'd been through every route in and out of Vegas, and I'd seen this tower, which haunted me, especially after the shooting. And that's what led me to Vegas and to all the witchcraft that we've unfolded up to now. But if you're interested in all that stuff, feel free to go back to the beginning of the Vegas Exposed series where I start to tell this story. But I want to move along because we've got a lot of ground to cover today. And I'm going to read you this outtake from Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, which first opened my eyes to this whole scam, this whole fiasco, this Vegas shooting, which is planned by the Order of Skull and Bones and that bloodline, which goes back to Knights Templar. Warren Delano, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandfather, first went to China at age 24 and was chief dope hustler for Russell and Company for a decade before returning to New York as a wealthy aristocrat who was looking for love. While in China, Delano wrote home that opium had an unhappy effect, quote, on its users, but argued that its sale was fair, honorable, and legitimate. I went on to write this book back upright, and I was just buttoning it up as the shooting rang out, and I did a little bit of study on it, and actually wound up putting a full chapter about the predictive programming included in the Vegas shooting. And I just want to read you a little outtake, and then I'm going to thread this all together for you. But this outtake says, the paddock in which these folks were murdered was sandwiched between Russell Boulevard, named for the evil family who founded Skull and Bones on Yale University, and Mandalay's Delano Tower, a tower which was named after the dope-dealing Warren Delano, who was chief dope hustler at Russell and Company, an American evolution of the dope-dealing East India Company. And if you haven't read my books, this East India Company bloodline, which goes back to the Royal Crown, killed 100 million people in India through a devastating famine by forcing them to grow opium instead of their life-sustaining cereal crops. If you've read Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, you already know that Warren Delano is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's granddad. So now I had this strong connection back to the tower, which compelled me to go look on the property for predictive programming elements in their art and stuff. And I had no idea I would uncover the chain of events that has led to determining that the American $1 bill folds into a black magic satanic altar in a practice which actually requires human sacrifice in order to perform. And so I'm going to read you about this Samuel Russell, who I went on to learn about that Franklin Delano Roosevelt wound up working for in order to spread dope in the first opium crisis in America. Okay, so this has happened over and over again. It's been a big scam. But this, if you look at this, Samuel Wadsworth Russell, he was the cousin of the founder of the Order of Skull and Bones. So here's a strong link of connection, collusion. Skull and Bones, and so I'll go on and read this, is an undergraduate senior secret student society at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. The oldest senior class society in the university, Skull and Bones, has become a cultural institution known for its powerful alumni and various conspiracy theories. You're going to find out today these aren't theories, that I've connected them strongly to the Mandalay Bay shooting. The Society's alumni organization, the Russell Trust Association, and I want to explain to you that this Russell Trust Association is the only 501c3 nonprofit whose books are off limits to the IRS, and it was founded again by this Russell, this William Huntington Russell that you see here. And here I give you an imagery to show you that the tombs, the Order of Skull and Bones' meeting place is called the Tomb. It's a dark, sinister temple with no windows. Creepy place, but it's right down the road from, as you see here, Samuel Wadsworth Russell's mansion, which he bought through proceeds of destroying America with the opium epidemic, the first opiate epidemic. And I want you to understand that this Samuel Wadsworth Russell, cousin to the founder of Skull and Bones, William Huntington Russell, never even attended university at Yale, so it's strange that he's held in such high veneration. And again, kitty corner to Skull and Bones is his home. Here's a picture of George Bush, and he's posed here with Geronimo's skull. And I'm going to make the point today, I'm going to make the connection that, in a strong case, that I'm going to prove to you that the Order of Skull and Bones is only a modern evolution of the Knights Templar. But as you can see, there's a skull and bones, actual skull and bones that they're posing with, because these people are ancestor worshippers, and they worship the bones of their dead, in particular historic dupes like Geronimo. And I'm going to show you how George Bush's grandfather actually dug up and robbed the grave, desecrated the grave of the great Native American chief Geronimo, but he was actually in on it too, if you've read my books. William Huntington Russell was an American businessman, educator, and politician. Notably, he was a co-founder of the Yale University secret society, Skull and Bones, and he was a descendant of several old New England families, including those of Pierpont, Hooker, Willett, Bingham, and it goes on to name a few more, which it doesn't include. But I want you to know that the so-called pilgrims who were supposedly escaping religious persecution, that was nothing of the sort. These people were bloodlines of this oligarchy that were related to the crown. These were seeds as people to be our leaders, our rulers, our kings. And remember that if you think a cruise is expensive today, imagine what it would cost to load up anybody you could afford to put on a steamer, possibly only yourself, and any belongings you could fit in a sea chest to take across the ocean. So that was a very expensive thing. It wasn't a bunch of poor, destitute people. The first load of so-called settlers who came and devastated the Indian populations on this continent were privileged, very privileged families who now have gone on to be all of our presidents and who have created this false reality for you. Here is an aerial map. If you've watched the show, you've seen this before, but you can see that on the north side of the city block of the Mandalay Bay property, there you see Delano Tower. Again, back to this dope-dealing bloodline, and there you see, in collusion with them, a Russell Road on the south side of this city block. And I want to point out that, fittingly, it's between the 32nd hundred and that meant to say 3300 blocks of Russell Road. So here we see this connection to the Freemasons, and as you know, the shooter shot from the 32nd floor, a really strong degree in Freemasonry, because it actually speaks about, if you've read my books and if you've read about this degree, it actually asks the initiate to make the supreme sacrifice. And if you read what a supreme sacrifice is, it's giving your life as someone does for their country. But again, this Delano Tower absolutely haunted me, and I'm going to read you until I went there because of this weird series of events. And I'm going to read you an outtake from the Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals series again. And it says, the Order of Skull and Bones is said to have crooked many skulls. Pancho Villa's and U.S. President Martin Van Buren are among their unusual collection. In a publication printed by the Order, the continuation of the history of our Order for the Century Celebration 17 June 1933, here we have that 1933 again, written by one of the organization members, one of the 6 grave robbers recalled the night of the tragic grave robbery of Geronimo's head. And remember, this comes from the Order of Skull and Bones' own minutes, which were leaked into the public. And here in this next slide, we see that George Bush, the Bush's patriarch, Prescott Bush, who strangely funded Hitler, his rise to power, and actually lost assets to the Trading with the Enemy Act, a lot of them. But here is the actual, the Order of Skull and Bones' actual outtake of that night that Prescott Bush creepily dug up the head and bones, relics of Geronimo, the great Native American chief. And the quote goes on to say, "The ring of pick on stone and thud of earth on earth alone disturbs the peace of the prairie." I want you to remember Las Vegas means the prairie, strangely. An axe pried up the iron door of the tomb, and Patriarch Bush entered and started to dig. We dug in turn, each on relief, taking a turn on the road as guards. Finally, Patriarch Ellery James turned up a bridle, soon a saddle horn and rotten leathers followed, then wood, and then, at the exact bottom of the small round hole, Patriarch James dug deep and pried out the trophy itself. We quickly closed the grave, shut the door, and sped home to Patriarch Mellon's room, where we cleaned the bones. Patriarch Mellon sat on the floor, liberally applying carbolic acid. The skull was fairly clean, having only some flesh inside and a little hair. I showered and hit the hay, a happy man. So you can see their reverence for these relics, these bones. And here again, I want to show you this picture. And again, this is a modern evolution of the Knights Templar, and how we know that is in a Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals. I actually had an entire chapter named The Supposed Disbanding of the Knights Templar, in which I list the charges from actual articles of the accusations from the Inquisition of the 9 Knights Templar, that they rounded up and did this mock human sacrifice so they could go back underground again. They never disappeared. But here's an outtake that tells exactly where this skull worship started, that's been passed on to the Order of Skull and Bones. And it tells, there's a list of charges drawn up by the Inquisition against the Templars when they were supposedly dismantled on 12 August 1308. And the articles of the accusations read, "Item, that in each province the order had idols, namely heads, of which some had 3 races, and some one, and others had a human skull. Item, that they adored these idols, or that idol, and especially in their great chapters and assemblies. Item," and I want you to remember, the Order of Skull and Bones is chapter 322. "Item, that they venerated them," the skulls. "Item, that they venerated the skulls as God. Item, that they venerated the skulls as their savior." So now we have a strong spirit of Antichrist. And I'm going to flash you this imagery, this artwork of the Knights Templar being burned, because I want this imagery in your head as I'm reading on. "Item, that they said that the head could save them. Item, that they said the head could make riches. Item, that they said the head made the trees flower. Item, that it made the land germinate." So here we have this connection back to these flowers in the Knights Templar. I want you to remember the mirror, the flower, and the life, the 3 things required ingredients in order to become the sun god. Item, that they surrounded or touched each head of the aforesaid idols with small cords, which they wore around themselves next to the shirt or the flesh. Item, that in his reception the aforesaid small cords, or some lengths of them, were given to each of the brethren. Item, that they did this in veneration of an idol. Item, that the receptors enjoined them, the postulants, on oath not to reveal the aforesaid to anyone. So they were sworn to secrecy because they were worshiping bones of the dead. They're necromancers. And this was passed on to the Order of Skull and Bones, and that's why they pose with those bones and dig up bones of their dupes, their historic dupes that they programmed with these demons, and they went out and did their bidding, and they turned around and their henchmen took what was theirs, their soul. In the royal heraldry of the royal crown, as you see from Prince William's bloodline, these people are from the tribe of Judah. This is a tribe of Jews, and we don't need to go into that right now because that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about this Jewish scholar, or this Jewish mystic, Kabbalistic mystic, Hani. And there's a Jewish inscription on this cinched belt, this garter as the Knights Templar called it, surrounding their heraldry. And this is in French. Strange. So here's the Knights Templar connected back to these Jewish mystics, which, if you've seen the last episode, very, very disturbing. And this is one of these strings that they touched these skulls with, and then they cinched them around their thighs, and so that would give them the power of these bones, they thought. And it's hard to argue with them since they're still ruling the world, and they just kicked off the 10th crusade. Item: that they surrounded or touched each head of the aforesaid idols with small cords, again here we see, which they wore around themselves next to the shirt of the flesh. Back to the Order of Skull and Bones. If you've read my book, Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, you know in the thesis I found this Russell family who was particularly chosen out of this royal crown bloodline to be the terrible henchmen for the royal crown. And that's what America has become, this Jesuit henchman, the tip of the spear, of Neptune's spear. And so here is I'm proving to you that the Skull and Bones members are the same royal bloodline, because as you see this cinched belt, this garter with this Hebrew inscription in French for the Knights Templar, I want you to remember that there's only 24 initiates into this order, because this garter represents the Order of the Garter, which is another creepy little cabal, just like the Order of Skull and Bones. And I imagine they're higher up because, again, but there's no reason that this same garter would be there, because there's only 24 members of the Order of the Garter, but they're here as the henchmen, and that's why they've caused such havoc in the Middle East. The exact same grounds that blood has been war grounds, theater of war that's been going on since ancient times in the Bible. They've continued this. And here again, I want to re-show you that this is what compelled me back to Mandalay Bay, the strong link of collusion between the Knights Templar, the modern evolution of which was the Order of Skull and Bones. William Huntington Russell founded it, and as you see there on the south side again, Russell Road, and then Delano Tower on the top, and then Mandalay Bay is sandwiched between. So I knew there was some creepy stuff there, which is where the whole Vegas Exposed series. And if you're digging this, you can always go back and just hit it on the playlist and just start the Vegas Exposed series, and we'll catch you all the way up to through some crazy stuff that you'll really enjoy if you like this so far. And so now I had a very strong Skull and Bones connection to Mandalay Bay, and as I paid him a visit, as you know from the show, I noticed something very peculiar, which I already noticed obviously before I went there, which is this pyramid with the lighted capstone that's on the $1 bill, and the Great Seal, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today, is identical to the Luxor's pyramid. And I want you to remember, spilled blood, just like they spilled blood in this little arena in front of this little paddock in front of the Luxor. There was a lot of blood spilled there, but remember, blood has been spilled in the center of this big giant retablos, this pyramid, for a long time, because look at the logo with the hexagram with two men fighting. These men have spilled blood in there for a long time, and don't think that when that blood hits that mat, that's not something very, very spiritually charged. And these are rituals, man, that they're bringing these things back. I used to watch UFC too, and all this, I can't even watch anymore because I know what they're doing in there, man. I know why that blood's being spilled, and it has nothing to do with the strongest man in Vegas or anywhere else for that matter. But as you can see, I started to realize really quickly that this was the event programmed onto the $1 bill. So when FDR added this pyramid to the $1 bill, he planned on shooting these people in Vegas. And you can see the little flowers blooming around this pyramid, which is set in water with a creepy background and this lighted capstone now returning, letting you know that this New World Order is complete. And I hate to even use that word because it's been so overused, and now it's just a buzzword for conspiracy buffs. But as you can see, if you watch Judavision, you're one of 127 people right now that know the absolute truth because you've committed your life to learning the truth. And again, Delano Tower sits right behind The right next to the Luxor, the pyramid that's designed to the predictive programming on the $1 bill, and again, it's the tower that matches the other one from which the gunman shot right behind it. Classic Templar fashion, they put all the clues in the tower behind it, and these clues are required by their devotional artwork. They have to do it in order to bring back the sun god, so we can chase them back. And this is the only time I know of in history that we busted them as they worked. There's a lot of people that have busted them looking back, and a lot of that's still sketchy research. But we're watching these people work real time. A few of us that have been initiated into truth. Welcome to Judavision. Hit the bell. Hit the subscribe button. So, and again, if you have any doubts about this Delano connection to the dollar bill and to this scene of the crime, this Luxor with the lighted capstone, look at the bar at the base of Mandalay Bay's Delano Tower. It's called Franklin. So here we are, strong collusion to the $1 bill. He added this thing, you guys. So no question here that that's what they did. That this was predictively programmed. And look at the capstone, man. Look how you don't see many photos in which you can see the capstone that clearly. But look, it's identical imagery to what they put on the $1 bill. Here you can see from Skyfall Lounge, Satan fell from the sky, as you know, to earth in Revelation 9:1, and it's the 9/1 Harvest Festival, and that tower opened on September 1st, 9/1. It's supposed to open on 9/1, open on 9/2 when this beast came out of the ground. So here again, strong link of collusion back to Revelation. But again, here you see the view from up top from Delano Tower, and the bottom it's Franklin, and it says unparalleled view. Folks, Judah, open your eyes, Judah. Watch the show. Subscribe to the show. Again, the sign on the front marquee said 1, all capital letters, just like it is on the $1 bill. Michael Jackson, one of their other, I'm sure, sacrifices. There he is, doing his show 1, hiding his eyes, letting you know there's something secret going on there. And again, the shading's very similar to the $1 bill, and again, it's all block letters. This represents the next ritual and bringing the world back as one. Again, Cirque du Soleil is French, fittingly, with this Knights Templar theme. And again, that means Circus of the Sun. One world agenda, very clear here. Again, on the back of the $1 bill, on the obverse, you see this Latin inscription for the New Rome, like Matt Cooper's bringing in, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Back to the one. If you guys don't see this again, we might be picking the wrong opposite sides of this battle. Again, here's Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was the 32nd U.S. president from 1933. So strong collusion back to this 32-33 that you see on the blocks of Mandalay Bay on Russell Boulevard. Russell being who founded the Order of Skull and Bones. You getting it? From a surname recorded as Delano in French. Delano, and indicating that the bearer was from a place called Lanu, ultimately Gaulish, meaning wetland or swamp. And if you watch the show, go back and watch the one on the Whore of Babylon. I don't remember what I called it, but it talks about the pedophile priests or whatever, and their Gauli priesthood, just like J.K. Russ and Matt Cooper have. But ultimately, Gaulish means wetland or swamp, which is disturbing because when they created the Vatican, if you've watched that show, you know they drained a swamp in which they worshipped a swamp monster and made secret human sacrifices. But when they drained the swamp, then that swamp monster became Nero's circus and Caligula's circus, where they crucified Peter and Paul underneath that obelisk, and they have a matching one right in front of the Luxor because that's where they do human sacrifices since the beginning of time. Okay, and now we're using this, and if this Gaulish, you know, we talk about that a lot because the beast came through here, and we'll do a study on that. But this name Gauls, to make another connection back to the Bible, and your Bible should become very interesting after watching this series and this show. Gaulish is where the word Galatian comes from, the Galatians from the Bible. So this connects a real solid connection for you, who the Galatians were and what they were up to, man. And so absolutely incredible that we're now using this terminology, draining the swamp. So this means they're going to bring these human sacrifices. It's symbolic back, just like they did when they created the Vatican, just before the Vatican, when they slaughtered all the Christians in the wake of Jesus Christ being here on this planet, and he's coming back very soon. So if you're on the wrong side, I fix that because the proof is there and now we're just picking sides. Look, and as you can see, looks like there's some scrying that you could do in this water. You've got a mirror imagery, and this is your distraction for the truth, what's really happened here. And again, I want you to see from a surname indicated the bearer was from a place called Lanu, meaning wetland or swamp. Drain the swamp. That's where that comes from. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, again, served as 32nd president. But other noteworthy achievements were he started World War II, and he built the first. He was the president under which they did the Manhattan Project, which was formed in Bohemian Grove, where our presidents worship a stone owl. But again, this is why presidents shouldn't be in power for 12 years, and he was one of the most loved presidents of the United States. But let's talk about how this Great Seal got there, because this story is fascinating. And here's some excerpts from letters from this guy, Henry Wallace, that seems to be Franklin Delano Roosevelt's secret handler, the guy behind the scenes. Franklin Delano Roosevelt got to be the guy that stick his name out there. They knew this would eventually implode, who would take the heat for it. But there's a guy standing behind him that was pivotal in adding this Great Seal, which if you know the history of it, it took them a long time. I don't remember how long, but it shouldn't have taken nearly as long for them to get this to the engravers because they couldn't supposedly agree and they wanted everything just perfect. But as you know from watching the show, this folds into a satanic altar, and that kind of programming isn't easy. It's very complicated to keep everything straight and all the programs that they wanted to match up when they folded that dollar bill up into a satanic Solomonic altar. But this little outtake says, I noted, and this is just to give you an idea of what we're doing. We'll study this a little more depth in a minute. But it says, turning to page 53, I noted the colored reproduction of the reverse side of the seal. The Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum impressed me as meaning the new deal of the ages. I was struck by the fact that the reverse side of the seal had never been used. Now you know why it wasn't used, because they were saving it for this special magic trick. Therefore, I took the publication to President Roosevelt and suggested a coin be put out with the obverse and reverse sides of the seal. But again, we know Delano approved this measure, which put this on this supposed great seal, which folds into this satanic altar to commit human sacrifice with this pyramid where they did commit human sacrifice almost 100 years later. Okay, so we now know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a dupe also. And so let's learn a little bit more about his handler, Henry A. Wallace. And Henry Agard Wallace was born on, we won't worry about that. It was an American politician, journalist, and farmer who served as the 11th U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, the 33rd Vice President of the United States, and the 10th U.S. Secretary of Commerce. He was also the presidential nominee of the left-wing Progressive Party in the 1948 election. The oldest son of Henry Cantwell Wallace, who served as the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture from 1921 to 1924, Henry A. Wallace was born in Adair County, Iowa in 1888. After graduating from Iowa State in 1910, Wallace worked as a writer and editor for his family's farm journal, Wallace's Farm. He also founded the Hybrid Corn Company, a hybrid corn company that eventually became extremely successful. And if you're starting to get some weird feelings in your gut, it's because his dad created this company, Hybrid Corn Company, which evolved into something we know from, if you've read my books or if you've studied conspiracy at all, Monsanto, who provides us all of our fish food in this giant fish bowl that they've created for us. And this hybrid, I think it's cool because I used to go back to the Midwest for a cool golf tournament with my father-in-law. And I remember everybody, they talk about these hybrid clubs, but they called them hybrid. And I remember thinking that's kind of strange, but now I know where that came from. That particular phonetics is from this corn company that turned into Monsanto, who now has cornered the market on any seeds, and you can't find seeds that haven't been tampered with. Wallace displayed an intellectual curiosity about a wide array of subjects. This should concern you because he has access to secret knowledge being in this crew, including statistics and economics, and he explored various religious and spiritual movements including Theosophy. After the death of his father in 1924, Wallace increasingly drifted away from the Republican Party, and he supported Democratic presidential nominee FDR. So not only was this all peculiar, he was also a traitor. He switched sides in order to support this whole other arm And you got to know it's simply because of this Hegelian theory and this controlled conflict when you see that. But moreover, what I want to point your attention to is the fact that he explored various religious and spiritual movements, including Theosophy, because if you read about Theosophy, and you probably already know about it if you're in here, it's a movement that is bringing the spirit of Antichrist to the world. This movement was pivotal in that, one of the great accomplishments of Satan. But I want to read you this outtake because Theosophy is an esoteric religious movement. So it's a secret, kind of a secret society movement established in the United States during the late 19th century. It was founded largely by the Russian emigre Helena Blavatsky and draws its beliefs predominantly from Blavatsky's writings. Categorized by scholars of religion as part of the occultist current of Western esotericism, it draws upon both older European philosophies like Neoplatonism and Asian religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. Remember, these are strong themes throughout Mandalay Bay. As taught by Blavatsky, Theosophy holds that there is an ancient and secretive brotherhood of spiritual adepts known as Mahatmas. And if you watch the show and you're a subscriber, you're seeing all the religions come together in your Bible, open it up, who, although found across the world, are centered in Tibet. These masters are believed to have cultivated great wisdom and seemingly supernatural power. So here we are with the magic I told you that could be coming back. And Theosophists believe that it was they who initiated the modern theosophical movement through disseminating their teachings via Blavatsky. They believe that these masters are attempting to revive knowledge of an ancient religion, once found across the world, in which will again come to eclipse the existing world religions. So this one world religion, $1 bill. Theosophical groups nevertheless do not refer to their system as a religion because they're going to kill religion. And Theosophy preaches the existence of a single divine absolute, and that's Satan. It promotes an emanationist cosmology in which the universe is perceived as outward reflections from this absolute. So we're all one. All one, moving as one big organism, which we're getting pretty close to. Theosophy teaches that the purpose of human life is spiritual emancipation. Do what thou wilt, which is goes back into Greek and Roman times, probably before that. Satanism. Emancipation claims that the human soul undergoes reincarnation upon bodily death, according to a process of karma. It promotes values of universal brotherhood. Here we are, $1 bill, and social improvement, although it does not stipulate particular ethical codes. But I want you to look at this Ouroboros on the logo for the Theosophical Society. There's no religion higher than truth. This couldn't be further from the truth. And I want you to notice, though, moreover, that the star, the eagle, which is actually a phoenix rising, if you've read history of how that got there, and they just changed it. But as you can see, that if you know the $1 bill, I should have put the imagery here. I apologize, I didn't. But that the rising phoenix or eagle is actually posed in the shape of this hexagram. And so this is part of this Theosophical Society, is this Great Seal. That's where they get the imagery. That is the other side of the Great Seal. I think we should also notice that Solomonic magic has here's the Great Seal of Solomon going back, what it looks like under Solomonic magic. It's all the same thing. And as you can see, King Solomon, all the instructions are right there. He's got the retablos on his chest, and he's scrying in water, which is also underneath the pyramid. So if you kind of think about that yellow pyramid in the water, that is the other side of the Great Seal. So here's both sides of the Great Seal, which comes from the Theosophical movement, which is a Satanism to bring the whole world together. If you don't see what's going on and you're not ready to start sharing the show, something is wrong with you. So I want you to also notice, very disturbingly, which comes from the Sanskrit regions, and so Babylon, India, were those ancient so-called gods, the Babylonian winged gods, the fallen angels. But this is a mark that goes all the way back. Be disturbed. Be disturbed. They never bothered, as I've said in past shows, never bothered changing their symbology because we believe everything that they tell us. Why would Satan change anything? It's worked so well over the years. And Theosophy, remember, if you watch the show, literally means the science of becoming God. So everybody's going to become a god, just like I've said in my shows. If you don't see this all coming together again, we've got to concentrate here because something terrible is coming, but it's also something beautiful. I don't want everybody to get too caught up in the negative side of this. I have to tell the story so you understand the impact of this, and it's so crazy. It's got to hit you in the side of the head, but once you do, you got to realize Yeshua HaMashiach is coming back so soon. Don't be one of those people he looks at and says, I never knew you, as you shouted, Lord, Lord. Don't do it. So we're going to delve a little deeper into Wallace's adding this dollar bill. And I want you to see that it's kind of weird that it looks like FDR in the bottom right doodled an angel there, which in Solomonic magic, if you're aware of that, that they think they're speaking to angels, but they're the bad guys. They're the ones that fell through these mirrors, which we see line the halls of Delano Towers floor level in their lobby. But this Wallace name I remembered from Braveheart, and I know that sounds really strange, but remember this predictive programming thing. Also remember Braveheart's holding the checkers of Freemasonry, and there's what represents the dragon of Revelation on his flag. So I knew there was a strong reverence for this man, and as it turns out, Henry Wallace is related to Braveheart, and Braveheart was just another step in this closing this terrible sphere of despotism. And again, it's ancestor worship. So you go watch the show and watch him scream and do all this stuff. They're going to watch what their ancestor did to put them in power. And when I say them, I mean your presidents, the kings all over the world who've changed their faces, as it says in the Bible. They married into all these bloodlines. But anyways, let's talk about these bloodlines, because one of my favorite websites of all time for uncovering these bastards to God is famouskin.com. And we're going to see today who 33rd U.S. Vice President Henry Wallace, the man responsible for putting Madame Blavatsky's logo for the Theosophical Society as your so-called Great Seal in order to summon up a terrible demon described in Revelation 9:11. So here's who he's related to. Get ready. Sir William D. Huntingfield, if that sounds familiar, we learned about a William Huntington Russell, and this is obviously evolutions of that, but he was a signer of the Magna Carta. He was responsible for forming another great society, just as his bloodline did in ours. Elihu Yale, the namesake for Yale College, and again, this is a bloodline who killed 100 million people distributing dope around the world, and through a famine from making the East India grow opium in place of life-sustaining cereal crops. And they also dealt all the slaves, if you've ever wondered. William Stoughton, chief judge and prosecutor of the Salem witch trials, very disturbing, because I've made these parallels. And remember, in the witch trials, they were using these mirrors that you see, these scrying mirrors, were popping up all over the place. Queen Mary and all them they were scrying. John Dee, who actually, again, if you've watched the show, you know John Dee coined the term the British Empire. So let's get going, because there's a lot here. William Williams, William the Conqueror. This guy is a William of all Williams. And see here, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Voltaire, who's influenced your world more than you'll ever know. And of course, historic traitor, as we see Henry Wallace also is, Benedict Arnold, who was a traitor of the American Revolution. So that was the Skull and Bones act there too. General Joseph Warren. If Warren sounds familiar, you're going to see a lot of this surrounding these people. And there was a Warren commission who determined that there was a lone shooter and there was no collusion very quickly, if you remember. And I want you to know that I study these names in very great detail. And if you look up Warren, Warren is a series of burrows and connecting tunnels that rabbits go into and hide. And if you put water down one, they pop out another. They're notorious for being very clever this way. And what they're telling you is they hid Warren in plain sight in his name. Exactly what they did. They hid all the evidence. They stored it away down in their little burrows in their warren. Oliver Wendell Holmes, American Fireside poet, signer of the Declaration of Independence, Lyman Hall. Millard Fillmore, president. Grace Slick, Jefferson Airplane, very, very influential on your reality. General George B. McClellan. Civil War, Ulysses Grant, disturbing. C.W. Post, founder of Post Cereals, who Monsanto's shoveling all this crap to right now to shove down our throats. Oliver Wendell Holmes, and they make our fish food, right? The U.S. Supreme Court Justice. And remember, there's 7 right now. There's 7 Yaleys, Yale graduates on the Supreme Court bench, and 2 Harvards, both slave trading and dope dealing learning institutions of supposed higher learning. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, poet, Eli Whitney, inventor of the cotton gin, supposedly kicked off the Industrial Revolution. Again, hoarders of technology, doling it back to you little by little and creating them as the heroes of their ancestors who passed this on to them secretly. Look, Eli Whitney, if you look at the aerial map over at Vegas, you see this name there. You see this name all over Connecticut, all over New Haven, because this is a powerful skull and bones family. A lot of Whitneys. Clement Clark Moore, author of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, Created Your Reality. Emily Dickinson, poet. Francis Edward Hinckley, co-founder of the University of Chicago. Now you see how we got this bullcrap indoctrination that's led to the opiate crisis and us being, one of the worst school systems in the world, in the modern world, anyways. And so Paget Brewster, TV actress James Sherman, Vice President Samuel Pierpont Langley. There we see that Pierpont, the Order of Skull and Bones, goes back to that Mayflower family. Pierpont Samuel Huntington Russell. Here we go. Astronomer and aviation pioneer, giving you the gift of flight. These fallen angels. Louisa May Alcott, author of Little Women. You think you got a chance of writing a book and making it really famous? I'm not sure. Unless you're related to these creeps. Marjorie Post. And that doesn't make everybody who's related to these people. That sounds really bad. But know that I've studied these people a lot. And you got to be the best of the bloodline. You can't just be the best. Sir Robert Laird Borden. We know that name Borden because they've been delivering you food. And he was the 8th Prime Minister of Canada. A very important man in the world. Joseph Smith, founder of the Mormon Church. Blatant Freemason. I've told you the Holy Grail is this breastplate of judgment, this Urim and Thummim, and he talks about talking to God through this thing, who's Satan. It's scrying, and the Knights Templar were guilty of this too, and that was the Holy Grail. But if you look at the Mormon churches, they have Freemasonry symbology, all in their stone, carved in their stone, and their stained glass. Very, very strong. Tennessee Williams, author of A Streetcar Named Desire. Norman Rockwell. All you look at comes from this bloodline. Who we've been made the slaves to serve and provide their cush living. Lucretia Rudolph Garfield, First Lady of President James Garfield. Wilbur Wright, again, gave you flight, and his brother Orville. J.P. Morgan gave you banking. Chase, wasn't that one of the banks that was too big to fail, quote unquote? Why aren't we paying attention? Fannie Farmer, author of original Fannie Farmer cookbook. So telling you how to cook this crap they serve you. Alan Dulles, 5th director of the CIA. If you read my books, you know CIA was started nearly in toto by Bones members. That's where they get their operatives. John Foster Dulles, 52nd U.S. Secretary of State. Ethan Hawke, actor. George H.W. Bush. I put a little skull and bones there to denote his membership in the Order of Death, the Merchants of Death, as they call themselves. Philip Danforth Armour. This guy founded Armour Foods. Some more fish food. Sarah Jessica Parker, TV movie actress. George W. Bush, another skull and bones initiate into the mysteries. Jeb Bush. Haven't you ever wondered why George Bush is from Connecticut and he has a southern accent, and his goofy brother Jeb is the governor of Florida, and somehow their father, I believe, was a senator or governor of Connecticut? Prescott Bush, the guy we talked about, stealing skulls, grave robbery. Would you do that? But look, this guy is in charge of a state with a high amount of electoral votes, a ridiculous amount. Why was he placed there? Now you know. And obviously we know that he's been caught up in 2 scandals, I think in the same county for voter fraud. Walt Whitman, or tampering or something, allegedly, or whatever, I don't know. American poet, but we know what I'm talking about. Elizabeth Smart. Now you kind of know, if you know anything about ritual abuse and stuff like that. This is disturbing. Nelson Rockefeller, 41st Vice President. Strong skull and bones name. I didn't look all these people up, but the people I knew, I put skull and bones next to them. Christopher Lloyd, Kyra Sedgwick, again, Hollywood. Tuesday Weld, TV and movie actress. Thomas Edmund Dewey, 47th governor of New York, Babylon, governor of Babylon. Mark Twain, author of Tom Sawyer. I believe Mark Twain gets a shout out in Anton Zander LaVey's Satanic Bible. Edgar Rice Burroughs, author of Tarzan. Warren Harding, president. See what's going on here, people? George Gallup, inventor of the Gallup poll, a very important tool for programming you and your television programs. Alec Baldwin, television and movie actor, now portraying the doofy Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live. All related. He's related to him. Kate Upton, Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover model, Babylon. Linda Hamilton, actress. Sarah Palin, you know her. Dr. Holly Crippen, murder in Eric Larson's Thunderstruck, or the murderer in Thunderstruck. Don't know what that means, but James Taylor, singer songwriter. Howard Hawks, movie director. John Cena, WWE pro wrestler and movie actor. Tim Robbins, movie actor. Humphrey Bogart. Everybody is, all these, and there's much more. This is a short list. Ernest Hemingway, another Morgan. Clint Eastwood, hey, and I put this little thing to Bohemian Grove, this little weaving spiders may not, need not come here, to show Clint Eastwood is actually a member of that child sacrifice club in Northern California. Amelia Earhart, wonder what happened to her. William Rufus Day, a lot of things, mysteries of the world should be clearing up to you. I made a couple of comments, like, the beginning of my Judavision episodes when I first started doing this, that, this information would open up all the mysteries and tell the true world history. And it is, you guys. If you're paying attention, it is. It's not the greatest produced show in the world, but man, you got to understand how much information I am drudging through to get you these shows so fast. Man, I would have put this in a book. What a great book it would make. I don't know if we have time for it, so I had to just get it to you. Bill Weld, 68th governor of Massachusetts. Burt Reynolds, movie actor. Katharine Hepburn, you know her. Clarence Day, author. Adlai Stevenson, U.S. Senator from Illinois. Illinois, if you ever wondered about that word, I've done research on it. Always intended to maybe poke it in a book as a fun fact. But Illinois, that name comes from Linus. And Linus was one of the Babylonian winged fallen angel gods in Babylon. Ed Helms, movie actor. David Hyde Pierce, movie actor. John Adams Morgan, Olympic gold medalist, and comes from the Morgan family of bankers. Georgia O'Keeffe, American artist. If you're one of this bloodline and you got an idea, it's probably going to work. Treat Williams, actor William Howard Taft, co-founder of the Order of Skull and Bones, I believe. It's one of his real close relatives then. But anyways, I put another Skull and Bones by him because that's a strong Skull and Bones family. Gloria Vanderbilt, Gilbert and Clifford Noble co-founded the place where they distribute all of your programming, Barnes & Noble. Mizzou Peck, TV and movie actress, and Gunn, TV and movie actress. John Kerry faced 2004 George Bush for the presidency. Again, there's only 15 men in this club. That doesn't make any sense. But they're both Skull and Bones. Julia Childs, American chef. Thomas Pynchon, American novelist. Dick Clark, radio and TV host. Princess Diana, I think her dad was a butt wiper for the hierarchy or for the monarch. And Dr. Benjamin Spock told you how to raise your kids. Wondering how that worked out for you, America. Anderson Cooper, big time programming. Big time. He's a Vanderbilt. He's there for one reason, to help indoctrinate the world into where we're going. Lillian Gish, movie actress. Ted Danson, TV actor. Jake Gyllenhaal, movie actor. Maggie Gyllenhaal. You get the picture here. I know this is going on and on, but you gotta get it. President and CEO of IBM. I want you to remember Bill Gates. He's in this club too. Gates is a very strong Russell name, going back to DeRozel. Prince William, here we are. Prince Harry. This is exactly what I told you. Oliver Platt. Elizabeth Shue, Andrew Shue, Rand Paul, Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson, founders of the Beach Boys, Carl Wilson, obviously Matt Damon, Felicity Huffman, Drew Brees won the Super Bowl right after Katrina. And if you know what happened there was Skull and Bones involvement there too. Mike Love, Kevin Love, they like the Beach Boys on this website. They could put so many different people on here, influential people. Kevin Love, Sarah Ferguson, Louis Auchincloss, or whatever his name is, J.P. Morgan Jr., and here we are, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I know I took the long way here, but I wanted to make this point. Sir Winston Churchill brought to you World War II. Again, very powerful bloodline we have here. If you don't see what's going on, these people have profited from war forever. Even Prescott's father, Prescott Bush, Samuel Bush, I think he was the founder of Buckeye Castings and Steel, a very profitable business in times of war. John Hinckley Jr. shot President Ronald Reagan. So here we are, a relative of George W. Bush, who was the sitting vice president when President Reagan got that lead in his butt. And I'm sure he straightened up whatever he had messed up after that. That was probably a warning shot to him. But again, George Bush's relative, a Russell and Bones bloodline. Unbelievable. John Steinbeck, the Grapes of Wrath, very disturbing. Again, this Henry Wallace guy is in the bloodline of Skull and Bones, and these people are strong Knights Templar, and he put that great seal on your dollar. My thesis for the Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals series was based entirely on historic evidence of world dominion by Skull and Bones families and a little book titled Memoirs of the House of Russell from the time of the Norman Conquest. And this book, if you've read my book, Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, I make the strongest case about their connection back to the Knights Templar. There's no question. The order themselves, the bloodline themselves, John VI, Duke of Bedford, had commissioned that book, commissioned Jeremiah Holmes Whiffen to research their family bloodline, and he did so. And in that book, he told on this Viking bloodline that were Knights Templar and everything else, man. It's unbelievable. But I want to read you another outtake from one of my books that says, and this is about Daniel's empirical prophecy, but don't worry about that. I want to read you the outtake. Jeremiah Holmes Whiffen wrote this book, the Memoirs of the House of Russell from the time of the Norman Conquest, which is the work on which the thesis of my first book, written under the pseudonym Judah, was based. The book was chartered by John VI, Duke of Bedford, so it was written by no conspiracy theorist. Duke is the highest member of the royal bloodline outside the actual king or queen. So this isn't pulp fiction, guys. This is the real deal. The royal crown is related to all your presidents, and this is what my whole book series is about. You should check it out. Duke John hired his librarian, poet Jeremiah Holmes Whiffen to research and write the tell-all document, which draws great parallels between my nonfiction books and the invented Da Vinci Code. It is quite apparent that the Da Vinci Code was simply the fictitious version of the hidden truth, which you are finally reading now. It was just another intentional detour for truth seekers such as you, subscribers to Judavision. Whiffen's book was never meant to be studied by the common man. It was created to document the many conquests of the forerunners into the British throne for posterity, quote unquote. But the book was only intended for readers who were close relatives to the throne. They only made like 250 of these books, 200 or so. And as you can see, I did a document search, and I found the actual Braveheart here, Sir William Wallace, on page 125 through 127. And I'm not going to read you this because we've got too much ground to cover. But here again, this guy is in this Russell bloodline related to the crown, related to Skull and Bones, and all the bloodline members of Skull and Bones are all from this bloodline. It is a vetting mechanism. But here, look, this book, Historical Memoirs, was published in 1833. We have this strong link of collusion. And I want to read you this, starting with Opium Dynasty II, each subsequent opiate, which was even more potent than the last, was billed by the order as the cure for the prior. And I'm telling on their dope dealing in these books. And toward the end of each cure cycle, all-out pandemonium struck, as is happening now. At the end of this trail of opiate dynasties, I found that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandfather, Warren Delano, was a leader of the greatest drug cartel ever formed. And again, that tower flying in and out of Vegas sucked me in. And now that we've established Henry Wallace as one of FDR's fellow brothers of the Knights Templar, let us now understand his role in FDR's addition of a pyramid to our American $1 bill a little better. I'm just going to read you a little bit of this because it's very interesting. I was struck by the fact that the reverse side of the seal had never been used, and therefore I took the publication to President Roosevelt and suggested a coin be put out with the obverse and reverse sides of the seal. And so this is the very beginning that this Great Seal programming of the Las Vegas shooting was added. And again, these are letters written by Henry Wallace, recalling the day they added the pyramid. Roosevelt, as he looked at the colored reproduction of the seal, was first struck with the representation of the all-seeing eye, a Masonic representation of the great architect of the universe. Next, he was impressed with the idea that the foundation for the new order of the ages had been laid in 1776, but that it would be completed only under the eye of the great architect, who you now know as Satan. Roosevelt, like myself, was a 32nd degree Mason. Again, remember this fella, Stephen Paddock, Paddock means a fence in which to exercise animals, shot from the 32nd floor of a tower at Mandalay Bay, just in front of the tower, Delano Tower, who added this to the $1 bill. Unbelievable. And again, one was flashing on the sign because that's the name of Michael Jackson's show. He suggested that the seal be put on the dollar bill rather than a coin, and took the matter up with the Secretary of the Treasury. He brought it up in a cabinet meeting and asked James Farley, Postmaster General and a Roman Catholic, if he thought that the Catholics would have any objection to the all-seeing eye, which he as a Mason looked on as a Masonic symbol of deity. The all-seeing eye is their God. Farley said, no, there would be no objection. So how this guy speaking the Postmaster General for the entire Catholic Church, very disturbing in itself. When the first draft came back from the Treasury, the obverse eagle side was on the left of the bill, as is heraldic practice. As you can see, the pyramid's on the left now. Roosevelt insisted that the order be reversed so that the phrase of the United States would be under the obverse side of the seal. And I want you to remember, when you fold it up in this Aleph letter goes, the N goes into the center of the Great Seal. Where it now says, "In God We Trust," it goes away. As you can see, this terrible plot to spill American blood in Las Vegas goes back nearly 100 years, probably far longer than that. You look at early American money, this pyramid was on it already, in the colonies for fractional currency, for 2-cent dollar bill or 2-cent bills, which was banknotes. But anyways, here you see, it's astonishing how similar the crime scene that they predicted was. And again, a horrible, horrible tragedy that I was drawn to because my work drew me there. And again, if you wonder what witchcraft started this whole thing that I found in the tower, beginning to unfurl this terrible plot to destroy Americans, it was these mirrors which are used for Solomonic magic. But you have to watch the old shows to get a little more out of that. And that's actually an artwork installment in that mirror from J.K. Russ, who added a knife in a painting, just like in the Da Vinci Code. And you should go back and read the books. Back Upright is a great adventure. Doesn't get read enough because there's a lot of really good stuff. And again, in the lobby that reflects the elevator towers, which you see on the left of this black mirror, there's a message still written that says, "Don't wait. The timing will never be just right." Here's a close-up because, again, it's so hard to see this capstone, and it's identical. In Matthew 21:42, it reads, "Jesus saith unto them, Did ye never read in the Scriptures the stone which the builders rejected? The same has become the head of the corner. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes." So now look, Jesus himself is warning you that we rejected the capstone in building the temple, and we indeed have. We've forgotten all about that, and that's where that symbolism actually comes from. If you're a Freemason, I don't judge you. They lie to you to get you in there, but look, man, it's time to start looking at the facts. You could be their next dupe, and you would do it. That's how the Brotherhood is designed. Pyramids missing their capstones were a form of rebellion, anger toward God for flooding the world, and this is why the capstone was rejected. And again, if you've watched the show, you know that Skyfall Lounge is atop on the very tippy top of Delano Tower, and that's the view. And if you can see right in front of that, you can actually even see the killing fields nearly in which the people were shot. And it says, disturbingly, an unparalleled view. And this unparalleled view has to speak of something much greater, but I can't talk about that right now. Future episode. Subscribe, guys. This is going to get way better. If you think I've given up all my information, you're wrong. But a group of dark but enlightened people who know the truth are still very angry about God's decision to destroy their so-called golden age along with their evil ancestors by flood. And that's what they think they're doing, bringing back these magicians in this golden age of they get power, man. If you don't believe it yet, you're going to find it out the hard way. In Memory of Water was what Matt Cooper called this art exhibition in 2016, just before the shooting, just the year before the shooting. And I want you to look at some of this artwork. Here we see the royal family's crest with the eagle rising, which looks more like a, I don't know, pelican or phoenix is what it really is. Again, with the breastplate on, you know where that comes from now. If you're one of my Arabic speaking, and I got a few in here, I think, subscribers, would you mind decoding that? I didn't decode these paintings very hard, so there's a lot of discovery to be made if you're kind of getting started on decoding symbology. So this is a great place to start because, again, he made everything so blatant. I really didn't go very deep in decoding this stuff. But Shock, this bottom left, this creature bird thing, I think he's from Mesoamerican supposed mythology, which is, this guy was this ancient god was responsible for flooding things, you guys, which we're going to get to, which is why it's so creepy. Look at there's the logo for Starbucks. I haven't drank Starbucks in years because I had a creepy feeling about that logo when I started studying this stuff. And look on the top right, that little cloud around that distilled water or whatever that's being poked, drinking water, bottled water, representing a flood. Do you see that little cloud around it? That is the little cloud that's above the eagle on your $1 bill, which has the seal of Solomon in it also. This painting is called Hydrology, and this one you can see some disturbing imagery because you see this web, which is painted in the same style as we saw the smoking gun clue that was in Matt Cooper's painting, the way the pyramid on the easel was painted with that little monkey that was painting. He painted in the same fashion, and look, there's the stratosphere on its side, and again, there on the right you see this bear defecating on Glen Canyon there, which is the highest part of the reservoir that feeds everything in the west with water nearly. It was responsible for making the desert bloom. Okay, so it's disturbing because what are they doing here? This one's called distribution. I see predictive programming here for a flood, and it obviously would be Hoover Dam. Look here. In this imagery, it's called filtration. And the bottom left, you see remains of Jesus's cross that Matthew Cooper drew in the style of the fingerprints that we see are scanned on the Taco Bell commercial. So here we are again. This is disturbing, you guys. If you're a Christian and this stuff doesn't faze you to see your Savior in these strange poses and this devotional artwork, these graven images should absolutely disturb you. Here we have the same kind of stuff, the straws from the bloods of the saints, and on and on and on. It says H2O where it usually says in rear. I guess it's INRI on top of Jesus' sign. So severely blasphemous with this water imagery flooding the world. Again, it's called In Memory of Water, which is what pyramids were. They were rebellion. Hey, you flooded the world, but I built this giant building that has a side of steps, and I could just run up it if you do it again. These people are mad. These people, if you haven't figured it out, they know your Bible better than you do because we gave it to the birds. And they rewrote our Bible with all these false religions. In Memory of Water, again, heavy flood theme there. And I want you to see where our show started. I said that there was predictive programming that indicates that the Order of Skull and Bones might destroy the Hoover Dam. Now we see the Matt Cooper collusion in his paintings, the symbology, but now let us look at Warner Brothers' picture, San Andreas. And I haven't seen this picture. All I did was go watch previews when I was doing Google searches. I ran across it, and I found out that the predictive programming of the destruction of the Hoover Dam is disturbingly in this movie. And here you see the dam holding back Lake Mead. And here we see a dude, if you've read my books, named Paul Giamatti from Connecticut, attended Yale University. And looky here, the tagline says, for the movie, the catchline says, "Our model is predictive." Be afraid when you know that Paul Giamatti is Skull and Bones, class of 1989. I think that says it all. I don't think I need to say anything else here. And I don't think this is me being a prophet or me making claims or, I don't date set. I don't do any of that stuff. I know we're going into this golden age. That's all I know. And I know what I'm told to deliver on my show when praying. Again, nothing needs to be said here. He quote unquote said that was a 2.2. Our model is predictive right before the Hoover Dam was destroyed. And if we look at Hathor, who in the smoking, as I called it, the smoking knife clue painting in the installment in the lobby of Delano Tower, in the elevator lobby, creepily, that person, that entity or deity she was this Hathor, who's the female forerunner to the sun god, if you've been watching the show, moon goddess. And but there are only a couple of things that I really want to point your attention to here. It's Hathor came in the form of a peregrine falcon with a falcon head and a woman's body, as she was depicted in J.K. Russ's painting with the smoking knife clue. But also we see here that in her form as he sat, she was a cow, a sacred cow, and she is shown as a pure white cow carrying a tray of food on her head as her udders flow with milk. And I want you to remember the last episode in which you saw the food stacked up on trays in the Taco Bell commercials, and those old stone depictions, who I believe now is Hathor, because I really didn't know where I saw that imagery. But she is closely associated with the primeval divine cow, and again, the Canaanites worshiped this golden cow, a sky goddess whose name means great flood. Great flood. Here's the Hoover Dam again, and I found this on some little documentary. I put a snapshot on it, but look, there's a goat. The Knights Templar worshipped the goat demon Baphomet, and this is from some strange country too. Look, that's not even an American radio station who's broadcasting this weird imagery upon the dam, which seems like another ritual to me. And look at J.K. Russ, or it's either that or Matt Cooper's, one of the twos. This is on their social media, man. I think it's very strange that these two immigrants who are up to all this anti-American activity are taking photographs of these strange buildings and architectural features, engineering features to the dam. Makes you wonder if they've already programmed the explosives in those things or something, and that's why they're staring at that. But Herbert Hoover was the 31st president of the United States. So, and during he brought you the Great Depression, just in time for FDR to come in and do his scripted part in this horrible tragedy. But again, they gave him the honor of ancestor worship, and they named it the Hoover Dam after him, which I believe will cause another big problem for us, it appears, based on their own programming. So he's the president just before FDR, and the dam was named in his honor. Here in this imagery, this causes concern because, wait, who is that random dude in the top left? This is going to get really weird, you guys. This guy's name was, as you can see in that little, barely see in the writing, and Matt Cooper went as far. That's why I said these people wanted to get caught. He wrote Mulholland just under this guy's head. I never would have known who this guy was, likely. Nobody probably would have. But look, William Mulholland was especially revered by the order because he was born on 9/11, the verse in Revelation in which the destroyer comes. And he was an Irish American. And the Delanos, there's even a book down in their lobby in Delano Tower that says Ireland on it, on a little table in front of the coffee shop. So there's a connection there. And he was an Irish American civil engineer who was responsible for building the infrastructure to provide a water supply that allowed Los Angeles to grow into the largest city in California, you guys. As the head of a predecessor to the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Mulholland designed and supervised the building of the Los Angeles, the fallen angel, the Angels, Los Angeles Aqueduct, 233-mile long system to move water from Owens Valley. So just as they did in Egypt, the Nile fed these people who were put in the middle of nowhere, and then they fed them like all of their ancestors that we've seen, the posts and the people who made your cereal and invented Monsanto and all these people who made your fish food and became kings. But this guy, he helped to create that whole reservoir that fed and made those valleys some of the most fertile valleys in the world. The creation and operation of the aqueduct led to the disputes known as the California Water Wars. So now you see where they already started their Hegelian theory and started manipulating this water deal. In March 1928, Mulholland's career came to an end when the St. Francis Dam failed just over 12 hours after he and his assistant gave it a safety inspection. It makes you wonder if he was just activating things that were already built into this dam called St. Francis Dam. Again, that's where Pope Francis got his name. And if you remember St. Francis, he was a very prominent antichrist who brought these mysteries through the Catholic Church. And through this Franciscan order, they have preserved the pharaonic rites. Mulholland formerly retired in 28 and spent the rest of his life in seclusion, supposedly devastated by the tragedy. In retirement, believe it or not, he began writing an autobiography but never completed it. And believe it or not, shortly before his death, he consulted on the Hoover Dam and Colorado River Aqueduct projects. He died in 35 and is buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery in Glendale, California, in the Great Mausoleum Memorial Terrace, Sanctuary of Meditation. And they give his crypt number and the City of Angels. But he's alongside his electrical engineer, Ezra F. Scattergood. And let's remember that Ezra was a book in the Bible in which they rebuilt the Temple of Solomon. Temple of Solomon. And this dude, his engineer, electrical engineer, is Ezra. And he was buried next to him in a crypt. He was deposited next to him in a crypt. And I'm wondering if that was his assistant who helped him activate the St. Francis Dam, which was destroyed and destroyed human life in the process. Look, here it is lined up in the painting. I'm not lying to you, and I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong about this. And again, where there's concern for the stratosphere. Look at this. Here's some more Matthew Cooper installments. Very, very disturbing. Look at this, titled Vampire Headache. There's the stratosphere again underneath the mother wolf who suckled Romulus and Remus. That's where we get the name Rome. Romulus formed Rome. This is a verse in Isaiah. It says, I've given it to you a few times, but I want you to get the point. Your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence. And it is desolate, as overthrown by these strangers. Look, he's got the ibis. He's showing you how they're going to kill the three religions, which is why they shot up a Baptist church in Texas, synagogue in Pennsylvania, and then also that mosque. It represented a ritual killing of religion. And on the left side, you see there J.K. Rust, he's the smoking gun clue painter, and she's the smoking knife clue painter. And she's wearing their powerful skull and bones logo. People, seek the truth before it's too late. You'll really love this book, Back Upright. Go buy it, and it's absolutely, it'll explain how this whole system worked all through history, and you'll really enjoy it. But thanks you again. Subscribe, hit like, comment, share this with your friends. If you're too scared to share it on Facebook, which why are you? And Yeshua takes care of us. I was so afraid to deliver this information to you, and when I did, Yeshua blessed me immensely. When you cross that line and you actually do it, you're going to be just like Jesus. Jesus said they're not going to like you because they didn't like me either. And you see what happened in his wake. But I believe, man, this is the absolute truth. Thank you for joining Judavision. Until next time, God bless you.